There's a moment most people miss. It happens in silence. Nothing dramatic, no reaction, no argument, just someone sitting there, listening, while something inside them slowly rearranges itself. By the time anyone notices, it's already too late to interrupt what's forming. Quiet people are usually misread first and underestimated second. They're called shy, passive, disconnected, sometimes even empty. People talk around them, not to them. Conversations keep moving, decisions get made, laughter rises and falls, and the quiet person stays still, watching, absorbing. What most people don't realize is that silence is not absence, it's compression. While others release their thoughts in real time, quiet people store them, layer by layer, memory on top of memory, emotion without expression, questions without answers. They don't interrupt because they're still collecting data, and the longer that silence lasts, the heavier it becomes. Here's the part that feels uncomfortable to admit. Silence isn't peaceful for them. It's active. Something is always happening inside. Inside a quiet mind, nothing ever really stops. Every comment gets replayed later. Every tone is analyzed. Every reaction is compared to another reaction from weeks ago. Not out of insecurity, but out of pattern recognition. Quiet people notice contradictions most people gloss over. They remember how someone smiled while lying. They remember what was said before the room got loud. They don't jump to conclusions quickly. They let thoughts age. And aged thoughts change shape. What begins as confusion slowly sharpens into clarity. But clarity isn't the dangerous part. It's what clarity removes. Loud minds need movement. They think by speaking. They release tension by reacting. Quiet minds do the opposite. They don't need immediate relief, so they don't chase it. They sit with discomfort long enough to understand it. And when you sit with discomfort without running from it, something strange happens. You stop needing approval. You stop needing validation. You stop needing to be seen. That's when thinking becomes unsettling, not to others, but to illusions. There's a silent realization that often hits quiet people early in life. Most conversations aren't about truth, they're about comfort. People talk to feel safe, they agree to feel connected, they perform to feel accepted. Quiet people feel that gap immediately, the space between what's said and what's meant. And once you see that gap, you can't unsee it. So they stop reacting to words and start tracking behavior. They stop trusting tone and start trusting timing. They don't confront the illusion, they outgrow it. This is usually when others start feeling uneasy around them, without knowing why. Most people explain themselves constantly. They correct misunderstandings. They defend intentions. Quiet people eventually stop, not because they don't care, but because they realize something subtle and heavy. Being misunderstood is safer than being predictable. When people can't read you, they project. When they project, they reveal themselves. Quiet people learn more from how others misinterpret them than from anything said directly. And slowly, control shifts. Not control over people, control over self, but control comes at a cost. Quiet people don't vent often. They don't explode regularly. They don't unload emotions in public. So where does it go? It stays. Stored as pressure, as unresolved moments, as sentences never spoken. Over time, this creates emotional density. A mind that can hold contradictions without collapsing. They can love and resent at the same time, understand and detach simultaneously, care deeply without showing it. That duality is rare. and unsettling. Silence looks soft from the outside, but silence doesn't mean surrender, it means delay. Quiet people rarely react when provoked, not because they can't, but because they're deciding if it's worth it. They don't fight every battle, they don't correct every wrong. They wait, and waiting builds leverage. This is why, when a quiet person finally speaks with certainty, the room changes. There's a turning point most quiet people reach. It happens after enough misunderstandings, enough overlooked contributions, enough emotional restraint. They stop trying to be included in noise, not bitterly, not angrily, just internally. Their thinking becomes sharper because it no longer seeks approval. And thoughts that don't seek approval don't soften themselves. They become precise. Precision, when paired with emotional depth, becomes unpredictable. Quiet thinkers don't broadcast their next move. They don't rehearse out loud. They don't ask for consensus. They arrive at conclusions privately, and conclusions formed in silence are harder to shake. By the time they act, emotionally, intellectually, or relationally, they've already lived through the outcome in their mind. Everyone else is reacting in real time. They are not. As quiet people grow, something else happens. They become calmer, not because life gets easier, but because fewer things reach them. Drama loses its grip, chaos feels repetitive, noise feels transparent. This calm can be mistaken for coldness, but it's not numbness, it's selectivity. Quiet people feel deeply. They just stopped offering it to everything. Despite their composure, there's an ongoing conflict inside. The desire to connect versus the refusal to dilute themselves. They want meaning, not noise. Depth, not attention. Truth, not performance. And every time they choose silence over participation, they lose something, but they gain clarity. Over time, clarity becomes identity. People often say quiet thinkers feel intense without doing anything. That intensity comes from coherence, thoughts, emotions, and values aligned quietly, not negotiated publicly. There's no internal chaos leaking outward. And humans are sensitive to that, even if they can't explain it. Eventually, quiet people stop being shaped by rooms. Rooms start adjusting to them, not because they dominate, but because presence doesn't require volume. Maybe the most unsettling thing about quiet people isn't what they think. It's what they no longer need. They don't need to convince. They don't need to perform. They don't need to be understood immediately. They carry entire worlds inside them, complete, examined, and settled, while appearing still on the surface. And if any part of this felt familiar, not loud, not dramatic, just quietly accurate, that recognition didn't come from words. It came from something already awake in you.